Creations by Courtney here with part 4 of the Kiera Crochet Dress. I am so excited to see your finished dresses. So let's get stitching. Alright, so we have now attached both sides, finished the top so that it's the same height as the back. And now we're going to flip the dress inside out. I went ahead and weaved in any ends that were along here because it's going to be much harder once we have the shoulder seam. So let's flip this inside out and hopefully not tangle all the yarn or undo my work. So I'm going to move the yarn to this side. Oh, yep. I took my stitch marker out. So don't do that. Make sure you have your stitch marker in that live loop, which is going to help anyways. All right, so I'm using my little hamburger. Okay, so once you get it flipped inside out, again, untangle the yarn. And you want the wrong side facing you like so. And again, it's natural for the fabric to curl, but you want to line everything up. And now you're going to count from each end. You're going to count the number of stitches indicated within the pattern. And where we place the stitch markers, the opening is going to be for the head. And again, if you need to make it a little bit larger or smaller, you can for the fit that you want. I went with a moderate size because I know sometimes we don't want it to be too tight, especially with the thickness of a crochet fabric. So I like to pinch it together so I can count the stitches at the same time. And since I'm working on the small, we're going to mark the 14th stitch from each end. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. Taking a stitch marker. And I always count again to make sure. I'm going to go ahead and open up the other stitch marker because I may have moved my fingers. So let's double check. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. And if it's okay, if it looks like it's shifting a bit, as long as you place that marker through the right stitch through both fabrics. Okay, so moving that out of the way, now we're going to count 14 on this side. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, and 14. All right, like so. So it's written a little differently. So when coming over here, again, we cut the yarn and pulled it through to secure it. So what you can do is now take that out. That way you can get the live loop back, or you can have a stitch marker in place. And so we're going to hold this together again and lay it flat. This is going to be the head opening, and it may seem a bit large, but if you take your tape measure and measure in between, that's about 9 inches. And so 9 and 9, that's 18. And this fabric does have a little bit of stretch because the average adult head is about 20 to 22 inches. And so this gives enough give to pull it over the head. without being too tight. Again, if you want it smaller, a little more snug, you can bring it in a few stitches, but I wouldn't go too far so that you're not really trying to yank it down. So starting on this end, oops, where we have the yarn in from the back piece, you want to insert your hook through the first stitch of the front, pick up that live loop and pull it through, and bring your yarn around. And you can chain one or not, it's your preference, but you're going to now work through both fabrics. So lining up each stitch, you're just going to single crochet. And for me, I try to minimize seaming in many of my crochet designs. So this is why for this section, that first bit is a bit longer because we're doing this in 2 steps. And if by chance you weren't comfortable cutting the yarn, not knowing how long, a trick is that you could have crocheted in the number of stitches and then cut, you know, 6 inches or more from that point, because they recommend at least 6 inches to weave in. And personally, I prefer it to be a little bit longer. All right. If you have to, take this stitch marker out because it is in the way. And now, all right, working through both fabrics. And there we go. And if you want, just to make it a little neater, you can even slip stitch through here to secure, and then you still have that space for when we flip it back over. So moving that stitch marker out of the way, rotate so that the back is now facing you. And we're just going to do the same thing on this side. So remove the stitch marker, put your hook through, pull the live loop through so that brings it together. And holding both, chain 1, and then single crochet in each stitch to the stitch marker. We're not going to cut, but we will then flip the dress back to the right side out. And then using the current yarn, we will start the ribbing for the neck. All right, remove the stitch marker. Right. Now, since we're going to be working around, you can slip stitch again, like so, to bring that forward, but then you got to remember to work within here. So I didn't slip stitch on this side, but let's put the stitch marker back, and now we're going to turn our work back to the right side. And you may want to bring the yarn ball with you so it's just not tangled. All right, So we have this yarn end from this side of the shoulder, and we're going to pick up from here. And bring it to the outside of the work. Put your yarn on the hook. Hopefully you're not getting tangled in your yarn. Again, I like to have my yarn behind me. And I found it helpful to chain one. Okay. And if you look closely, you worked through this stitch here. So we're going to have this for the last stitch. And this is actually the first stitch because we worked through this one and this one. So this will be the last one and this will be the first one. And if you work 2 extra stitches, it'll be fine. And just your stitch count will be a little bit different. And so we are going to single crochet, and I found it helpful to place a marker because at this seam, it kind of pulls and it just kind of blends in with the seam from underneath. And that way, you know where you're going to slip stitch. So, single crochet in each stitch. And we're working along the back to the front because why not? At this point, the right and wrong side isn't as important because the ribbing will be made with front post and back post stitches. And if you made any adjustments to the number of stitches for your neck opening, just ensure that the stitches between the markers are an even number. That way when working in the round, you can make sure that if you start with a front post, you'll end with a back post to maintain the pattern rather than having 2 stitches, 2 front posts or 2 back posts together. So continue to single crochet around, and then we will turn our work to do a round of double crochet. So remember, this is where you last single crocheted. So now you're going to slip stitch to the first one to close the round. You can now remove the stitch marker. And let's turn. Chainless starting double crochet. And double crochet in each stitch around. And after doing that, I will show you the start of the front post, back post, and then that's pretty much that for the neck. And then we will move on to the ribbing at the hem. Okay, so we've now completed the second round of the neck ribbing. Turn your work, and we're going to chain 1, and we're going to back post, so use the front post for the pattern, back post, double crochet, followed by front post, double crochet, and then just repeat, alternating front and back post double crochets all the way around slip stitch to join, turn, and then repeat until you have 12 rows or your desired length for your fit around your neck, or if you're making this for someone else, you know, if they prefer a short collar, you can do a short one. If you want it to be extra long so you can roll it, this length is long enough to roll to make like a short turtleneck look, but the ribbing also creates that same turtleneck look kind of on its own, like in traditional sweaters. So just continue until it's your desired length, and then we will hop down to the bottom of the dress to do the ribbing at the hem. All right, so after finishing the neck ribbing to do the hem, now if you want to keep it simple, you can complete the hem by working in the round just like you did for the neck. But if you want the hem ribbing to look as in the pictures, again, this yarn end will work in, but you want to lay your dress out as flat as you can get to make sure that it's even, and you should get 2 stitches on each side, which is about the halfway point. So take a stitch marker, place it on one side, and then place the other on the other side, and then count the stitches between, and then flip your work and then count your stitches to make sure that you have the same number. We're just going to do just like the neck. We're going to start with a double crochet in each stitch, starting with the first marker, work until the next marker, and then alternate front post and back post. So this one, it can be an odd number or an even number. You just may have 2 stitches of the same at the beginning or end. So get your yarn and attach, and let's get started. All right, starting with the first stitch, attach. Again, I like to have a decent tail to work with. I like to pull the tail down to tighten. We're going to start with a chainless starting double crochet. And hopefully you won't do what I did and pull the yarn through this stitch. Oh, goodness. Okay. We'll just start that over. All right. So we have a double crochet. And now we're going to make another double crochet. And so for this first row, just double crochet in each stitch. And then until you reach the next marker. And then we shall start alternating the post stitches. All right, so now that we've completed the first row, turn your work, starting with a chainless starting double crochet in the first stitch. Now back post, double crochet, and then front post double crochet, back post double crochet, front post a double crochet, and just repeat this until the end, until one stitch remains, and in that last stitch make a double crochet. You'll turn your work and repeat this row, starting with a chainless starting double crochet, followed by back post, front post, back post, front post, until one stitch remains, and then double crochet. And you'll repeat row 2 until it is a 13 rows or the desired length, but it balances the dress well if the hem ribbing is the same length as the neck ribbing. So if you made any adjustments to length there, you may want to do similar adjustments for the hem, or maybe you want it to be shorter or even longer. So we'll come back together after we get the first piece done. And the second half of the hem will be started in the same way, except for you will start in this stitch that is marked. Again, do the exact same thing as the first half. Finish off, weave in ends, and there you have it. That is the Kiera dress to be worn for any occasion and in several different styles. So stay tuned to see one style idea. Okay, so we have now completed 11 rows of the ribbing, and it is pretty normal for it to come in a bit from the stretch. And so we're going to take some scissors and we're going to cut with the tail long enough for weaving in. Again, fasten off in your preferred method. And now we're going to start on the new side. So taking your yarn, just like we did for the first side, pick up your work, insert your hook into that first stitch. Again, if you need to, remove the stitch marker. Again, starting in the very next stitch, insert your hook, attach the yarn, like so, chainless starting double crochet in that first stitch, and then double crochet in each stitch to the next stitch marker. And hopefully you're not at the end of the yarn ball. I threw mine on a yarn ballet. All right, so when you get to that knot of when it first started, make sure that you're working in the right space. Okay, so we go here and then here for that next stitch. Again, I'm going to partially work over the yarn, the tail, and then weave in the rest. And so you're literally going to do the same thing on this side as you did for the other side. So I'll let you keep stitching and we'll come back together to see the finished dress. Don't forget to weave in your ends, unless you're a rebel and you're just going to tuck them inside. I won't tell, I promise. But remember, you're going to double crochet in each stitch to the next marker, turn, double chainless starting double crochet, and then back post, front post, back post, front post, and then double crochet in the last stitch, turn, and then repeat row 2 of the ribbon. And again, if you would prefer a solid piece of ribbon, that on the first side you just double crochet all the way around, but then do the same ribbing as the neck, where you start with a chain 1 and then a post stitch, back post, front post, back post, front post. So keep stitching and then we'll see the finished dress. I'm so excited. I'm so excited to see your dresses. I really, really am. And all the amazing color choices. All right. The bottom hemming is all done. We did the first part, started the second part, and now you have your splits on your side. And let's show the whole thing. And again, I forgot to show you this part earlier, but this is what the top ribbing looks like completed with the triangle. I'm just going to slide it up almost like a typewriter. We got the shaping for the armholes, and again, these are a moderate size because this is a winter style dress meant to be layered over a blouse, a long sleeve, bodysuit, whatever you want. We have some shaping through the body all the way to the hem. So there you have it. You are now complete with your Kiera dress made with the lovely alpine stitch, a lovely triangle opening for a little bit of sass and sexiness that we can wear from work to lunch to dinner to whatever you want. I hope you enjoyed this crocheting with Creations by Courtney. Keep stitching.